We are starting the third chapter, your devotional service, the change of heart. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalaakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Sunyamadi Paschata Deshatarine Panchakalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhaiva cha Patitana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktarinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. Hare Krishna, Praveen, we can read the first class.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Translation. Sri Sukadev Goswami said, Maharaja Parikshit, as you have inquired from me as to the duty of the intelligent man who is on the threshold of death, so I have answered you. Purport. In human society all over the world, there are millions and billions of men and women, and almost all of them are less intelligent because they have very little knowledge of spirit soul. Almost all of them have a wrong conception of life, for they identify themselves with the gross and subtle material bodies, which they are not. In fact, they may be situated in different high and low positions in the estimation of human society. But one should know definitely that unless one inquires about his own self beyond the body and the mind, all his activities in human life are total failure. Therefore, out of thousands and thousands of men, one may inquire about his spirit self and thus consult the revealed scriptures like Vedanta Sutra, Bhagavad Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam. But in spite of reading and hearing such scriptures, unless one is in touch with a realized spiritual master, he cannot actually realize the real nature of self, etc. And out of thousands and hundreds of thousands of men, someone may know that Lord Krishna is in fact in the Chaitanya Charamrit Madhya Leela, Madhya 20.122 and 23, it is said that Lord Krishna, out of his causeless mercy, prepared the Vedic literature in the incarnation of Vyasadeva for reading by the intelligent class of men in a human society, which is almost totally forgetful of the genuine relation with Krishna. Even such an intelligent class of men may be forgetful in their relation with the Lord. The whole Bhakti Yoga process is therefore a revival of the lost relation. This revival is possible in the human form of life, which is obtained only out of the evolutionary cycle of 8.4 million species of life. The intelligent class of human being must take a serious note of this opportunity. Not all human beings are intelligent, so the importance of human life is not always understood. Therefore, Manisinium, meaning thoughtful, is particularly used here. A Manisnam person like Maharaja Parikshit must therefore take to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna or fully engage himself in devotional service, hearing, chanting, etc. of the holy name and pastime of the Lord, which are all Hari Kathamrita. This action is especially recommended when one is preparing for death. Hare Krishna.
227. Hare Krishna, Swapna Mati. Hare Krishna, Swapna Mati. Hare Krishna, Sarsiya Mati. We can read the translation. Hare Krishna, Sarsiya Mati. Am I audible?
Yes, Prabhuji.
You're
Yes.
audible.
Hare Krishna, Swapna Mati. Will you be reading?
Yes, yes. Text 2.7 Translation. One who desires to be absorbed in the impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence should worship the master of the Vedas, Lord Brahma, and Brihaspati, the learned priest. One who desires powerful sex should worship the heavenly king Indra, and one who desires God progeny should worship the great progenitors called the Prajapatis. One who desires good fortune should worship Durga Devi, the superintendent of material world. One desiring to be very powerful should worship fire, and one who aspires only after money should worship the Vasus. One should worship the Rudra, incarnation of Shiva, of Lord Shiva, if he wants to be great hero. One who wants a large stock of grains should worship Aditi. One who desires to attain the heavenly planets should worship the son of Aditi. One who desires a worldly kingdom should worship Viswadeva. And one who wants to be popular with the general mass of population should worship the Sadhya demigod. One who desires a long span of life should worship the demigods known as the Aswini Kumaras. And a person desiring a strongly built body should worship the earth. One who desires stability of his post should worship the origin of the earth combined. One who desires the beautiful should worship the beautiful residents of the Gandhara planet. One who desires a good wife should worship the Apsaras and the Urvasi, society girls of heavenly kingdom. One who desires domination over others should worship Lord Brahma, ahead of the universe. One who desires tangible fame should worship the personality of Godhead. And one who desires a good bank balance should worship the demigod Varuna. If one desires to be a greatly learned man, he should worship Lord Shiva. And if one desires a good marital relationship, he should worship the chaste goddess Uma, the wife of Lord Shiva. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Sarasya Manti. You can read the purport. Hare Krishna. Vishek Prabhu. So, Hare Krishna Jagannath Prabhu, you can read.
Hare Krishna. Perfect. There are different modes of worship for different persons desiring success in particular subjects. The conditions for living within the purview of the material world cannot be the expected in every type of materially enjoyable asset, but one can have considerable influence over a particular matter by worshipping a particular demigod, as mentioned above. Ravana was made a very powerful man by worshipping a Lord Shiva, and he used to offer served heads to please Lord Shiva. He became so powerful by the grace of Lord Shiva that all the demigods were afraid of him until he at least challenged the personality of Godhead, Sri Ramachandra, and thus ruined himself. In other words, all such persons who aspire after gaining some or all of the material objects of enjoyment are the gross materialistic persons, are on the whole less intelligent, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7.20. It is said there that those who are bereft of all good sins are these who are intelligent is withdrawn by the deluding energy of Maya, aspire to achieve all sorts of material enjoyment in life of pleasing the various demigods, or by advancing in material civilization under the heading of scientific progress. The real problem of life in the material world is to solve the question of birth, death, old age, and disease. No one wants to change his birth rate. No one wants to meet death. No one wants to be old and invalid. and no one wants to deceive. But these problems are solved neither by the grace of any demigod nor by the so-called advancement of material science. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the in the Bhagavad Gita as well as in the Srimad Bhagavatam, such less intelligent persons have been described as devoid of good sense. The good sense. Sukadeva Goswami said that out of the 8,400,000 choices of living entities, the human form of life is rare and valuable. And out of those rare human beings, those who are conscious of the material problem are the rarer still, and the still more or more rare persons are those who are conscious of the value of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which contains the message of Lord and his pure devotees. Death is inevitable for everyone, intelligent or foolish. But Parikshit Maharaj has been addressed by the Goswami as the as the as the Manishi, or man of highly developed mind, because at the time of death he left all material enjoyments and completely surrendered unto the lotus feet of Lord by hearing his messages from the right person, Sukadeva Goswami. But aspirations for material enjoyment by enduring persons are condemned. Such aspirations are something like an intoxication of the degraded human society. Intelligent persons should try to avoid these aspirations and seek instead the permanent life by returning home back to Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Very much. Next, but Hare Krishna Sagar Guru, next. Hare Krishna Sagar Guru. Hare Krishna Sagar Guru. Satya Mati, you can read.
Hare Krishna, shall I read?
Yes, yes.
Just I was out for some time. Text 8 translation. One should worship Lord Vishnu or his devotee for spiritual advancement in knowledge and for protection of heredity and advancement of a dynasty. One should worship the various demigods. The path of religion entails making progress in the path of advancement, ultimately reviving the eternal relation with the Lord Vishnu in his impersonal effulgence. To localize Paramatma feature and ultimately his personal feature by spiritual advancement in knowledge. And one who wants to establish a good dynasty and be happy in the progress of temporary body relations should take shelter of the Pitas and the demigods of their pious planets. Such different classes of worshippers of different demigods may ultimately reach the respective planet of those demigods within the universe. But he who reaches the spiritual planets in the Brahmajyoti achieves the highest perfection. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Satya Mati, you can read the ninth. You
Krishna?
two can you can complete the full paragraph.
Okay. Thank you. Translation. One who desires domination over a kingdom or an empire should worship the Manus. One who desires victory over an enemy should worship the demons. And one who desires sense gratification should worship the moon. But one who desires nothing of material enjoyment should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. For a liberated person, all the enjoyments listed above are considered to be absolutely useless. Only those who are conditioned by the material modes of external energy are captivated by different types of material enjoyment. In other words, the transcendentalist has no material desires to be fulfilled, whereas the materialist has all types of desires to be fulfilled. The Lord has proclaimed that the materialists who desire material enjoyment and thus seek the favor of different demigods, as above mentioned, are not in control of their senses and so give themselves to nonsense. One should therefore not desire any sort of material enjoyment, being sensible enough to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The leaders of nonsensical persons are still more nonsensical because they preach openly and foolishly that one can worship any form of demigod and get the same result. This sort of preaching is not only against the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita or those of the Srimad Bhagavatam, but is also foolish, just as it is foolish to claim that with the purchase of any travel ticket, one may reach the same destination. No one can reach Bombay from Delhi by purchasing a ticket for Baroda. It is clearly defined herein that persons impregnated with different desires have different modes of worship. But one who has no desire for material enjoyment should worship the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. And this worshipping process is called devotional service. Pure devotional service means service to the Lord without any tinge of material desires, including desires for fruitive activity and empiric speculation. For fulfillment of material desires, one may worship the Supreme Lord, but the result of such worship is different, as will be explained in the next verse. Generally, the Lord does not fulfill anyone's material desires for sense enjoyment, but he awards such benedictions to the worshippers of the Lord, for they ultimately come to the point of not desiring material enjoyment. The conclusion is that one must minimize the desires for material enjoyment, and for this one should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is described here as Param or beyond anything material. Sripada Shankaracharya has also stated Narayana Paro Vyaktat. The Supreme Lord is beyond the material encirclement. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, now you can read. Two paragraphs.
Two paragraphs.
Hare Krishna. Translation.
You can read the two paragraphs.
A person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of all material desire, without any material desire, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the personality of Godhead. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, is described in the Bhagavad Gita as Purushottama, or the Supreme Personality. It is he who can award liberation to the impersonalist by absorbing such aspirants in the Brahma Jyoti, the bodily rays of the Lord. The Brahma Jyoti is not separate from the Lord, as the glowing sun ray is not independent of the sun disk. Therefore, one who desires to merge into Supreme Personal Brahma Jyoti must also worship the Lord by Bhakti Yoga, as recommended here in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhakti Yoga is especially stressed here as a means of all perfection. In the previous chapters, it has been stated that Bhakti Yoga is the ultimate goal of the Karma Yoga, of both Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. And in the same way, in this chapter, it is emphatically declared that Bhakti Yoga is the ultimate goal of the different varieties of worship of the different demigods. Bhakti Yoga, thus being the supreme means of self-realization, is recommended here. Everyone must therefore seriously take up the methods of Bhakti Yoga, even though one aspires for material enjoyment or liberation from material bondage. Akamaha is one who has no material desire. A living being, naturally being the part and parcel of Supreme Whole, Purusham Purnam has as his natural function to serve the Supreme Being, just as the parts and parcels of the body or the limbs of the body are naturally meant to serve the complete body. Desireless means, therefore, not to be inert like the stone, but to be conscious of one's actual position, and thus desire satisfaction only from the Supreme Lord. Srila Jiva Goswami has explained this desirelessness as Bhajaniya Parama Purusha Sukhamatra Swasukattam in his Sandarbha. This means that one should feel happy only by experiencing the happiness of the Supreme Lord. This institution of the living being is sometimes manifested even during the conditioned stage of a living being in the material world, and such intuition is expressed in the manner of altruism, philanthropy, socialism, communism, etc., by the undeveloped minds of less intelligent persons. In the mundane field, such as outlook of doing good to others in the form of society, community, family, country, or humanity, is a partial manifestation of the same original feeling in which a pure living entity feels happiness by the happiness of the Supreme Lord. Such superb feelings were exhibited by the damsels of Rajabhumi for the happiness of the Lord. The gopis loved the Lord without any return, and this is the perfect exhibition of the akama spirit. Kama spirit, or the desire for one's own satisfaction, is fully exhibited in the material world, whereas the spirit of akama is fully exhibited in the spiritual world. Hare Krishna.
Thoughts of becoming one with the Lord or being merged in a Brahmajyoti can also be exhibitions of the Kama spirit if they are desires of for one's own satisfaction, to be free from the material desires, miseries. A pure devotee does not want liberation so that he may be relieved from the miseries of life. Even without so-called liberation, a pure devotee is aspirant for a satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. Influenced by the Kama spirit, Arjuna declined to fight in the Kurukshetra battlefield because he wanted to save his relatives for his own satisfaction. But being a pure devotee, he agreed to fight on the instruction of the Lord because he came to the senses and realized the satisfaction of the Lord at the cost of his own satisfaction by his prime beauty. Thus he became Akama. That is a perfect stage of perfect living. Udharadhi means one who has a broader outlook. People with desires for material enjoyment worship all demigods, and such intelligence is condemned in Bhagavad Gita 7:20 as Ritagnana, the intelligence of one who has lost his senses. One cannot obtain any result from the demigods without getting sanction from the Supreme Lord. Therefore, a person with a broader outlook can see that ultimate authority is the Lord, even for the material benefits. Under the circumstances, one with a broader outlook, even with the desire for material enjoyment or for liberation, to take to the worship of the Lord directly. And even whether when Akama or Sakama or Mokshakama should worship the Lord with great experience. This implies that Bhakti Yoga may be perfectly administered without any mixture of karma and jnana. As the unmixed sunray is very forceful and is therefore called Tivra. Similarly, unmixed Bhakti Yoga of hearing chanting may be performed by one and all, regardless of inner motive. Hare Krishna Prabhu, you can do that. 11th.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Translation. All the different kinds of worshippers of multi-demigods can attain the highest perfectional benediction, which is spontaneous attraction unfinancially fixed upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead only by the association of the pure devotee of the Lord. Purport. All living entities in different statuses of life within the material creation, beginning from the first demigod Brahma down to the small ant, are conditioned under the law of material nature or the external energy of the Supreme Lord. The living entity in his pure state is conscious of the fact that he is the part and parcel of the Lord. But when he is thrown into the material world on account of his desire to lord it over material energy, he becomes conditioned by the three modes of material nature and thus struggles for existence for the highest benefit. This struggle for existence is something like following the will o the wisp under the spell of material enjoyment. All plans for material enjoyment, either by worship of different demigods as described in the previous verse of the chapter, or by modernized advancement of scientific knowledge without the help of God or demigods, are illusory only. For despite all such plans for happiness, the conditioned living being within the compass of material creation can never solve the problems of life, namely birth, death, old age, and disease. The history of the universe is full of such plan makers, and many kings and emperors come and go, leaving a plan-making story only. But the prime problems of life remains unsolved despite all endeavors by such plan makers. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Swapna Mataji, you can read it.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Can you just highlight it, Prabhuji? Actually, human life is meant for making a solution to the problems of life. One can never solve such problems by satisfying the different demigods by different modes of worship or by so-called scientific advancement in knowledge. Without the help of the god or the demigods, apart from the gross materialists who care very little either for God or for the demigods, the Vedas recommend worship of different demigods for different benefits. And so the demigods are neither false nor imaginary. The demigods are the factual as we are, but they are much more powerful due to their being engaged in the direct service of the Lord in managing different departments in universal government. The Bhagavad Gita affirms this, and the different planets of the demigods are mentioned there, including the one of the supreme demigod, Lord Brahma. The gross materialists do not believe in the existence of God or the demigods, nor do they believe that different planets are dominated by different demigods. They are creating a great commotion about reaching the closest celestial body, Chandraloka or the moon. But even after much mechanical research, they have only very scanty information of this moon. And in spite of much false advertisement for the selling land on the moon, the puffed up scientists or gross materialists cannot live there. And what to speak for of reaching the other planets, which they are unable even to count. However, the followers of the Vedas have a different method of acquiring knowledge. They accept the statements of the Vedic literatures as authority in toto, as we have already discussed in Canto 1, and therefore they have full and reasonable knowledge of God and demigods and of their different residential planets situated within the compass of the material world and beyond the limit of the material sky. The most authentic Vedic literature accepted by the great Indian acharyas like Shankara, Ramanuja, Madhava, Vishnu Swami, Nimbarka, and Chaitanya, and studied by all important personalities of the world in the Bhagavad Gita, in which worship of the demigods and their respective residential planets are mentioned. The Bhagavad Gita affirms, Yanti Deva Vrata Devan, Pitrunyanti Pitir Vrata, Bhutani Yanti Bhuteja, Yanti Matyajino Pimam. The worshippers of the demigod reach the respective planets of the demigods, and the worshippers of forefathers reach the planets of forefathers. The gross materialists remain in the different planets, but the devotees of the Lord reach the kingdom of the Lord. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Jainadhu, you can read the next paragraph.
Hare Krishna. We also have information from Bhagavad Gita that all the planets within the material world, including Brahmaloka, are but temporarily situated, and after a fixed period, they are all annihilated. Therefore, the demigods and the followers are all annihilated at the period of the devastation. But one who reaches the kingdom of gods gets permanent share in eternal life. That is the verdict of the Vedic literature. The worshippers of the demigods have one facility more than the unbelievers due to their being convinced of the Vedic version, by which they can get the information of the benefit of the worships of the Supreme Lord in the association of the devotees of the Lord. The gross materialist, however, without any faith in Vedic version, remains eternally in darkness, driven a false conviction on the basis of imperfect experimental knowledge or so-called material science, which can never reach into the realm of the transcendental knowledge. Therefore, unless the gross materialists or the worshippers of the temporary demigods come in contact with the transcendental, like the pure devotee of the Lord, their attempts are simply waste of energy. Only by the grace of the divine personalities, the pure devotees of the Lord, can one achieve pure devotion, which is the highest perfection of human life. Only pure devotees of the Lord can show one the right way of progressive life. Otherwise, both the materialistic of life without any information of God or the demigod, and the life engaged in the worship of demigods in purest of temporary material enjoyment are different phases of phantasmagoria. They, they are nicely experienced in Bhagavad Gita also. But the Bhagavad Gita can be understood in the association of pure devotees only, and not by the interpretations of politicians or dry philosophical speculators. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, sir. Everybody. Thank you so much for joining today's session. We'll again meet on Thursday at 7:30, the 12th verse for this same chapter. वाञ्छा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमः नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। ट्रांसडेंटल बुक श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। धन्यवाद प्रणाम प्रवीण प्रभु, रत्ना मासी धन्यवाद प्रणाम। थैंक यू सो मच। अनिता मासी धन्यवाद प्रणाम। सागर प्रभु धन्यवाद प्रणाम। जगन्नाथ प्रभु धन्यवाद प्रणाम। हर्षिता मासी, लक्ष्मी प्रभु धन्यवाद प्रणाम।